Good evening, everyone. My quandary tonight was what to speak about. There's so many different angles of preparation for this time of year. So I want to start with something which is a little bit different. We're really right before Rosh Hashanah. And a lot of times we feel that the themes of the Yom Kippur davening are more relevant to us than the themes of the Rosh Hashanah davening. Yom Kippur is really about introspection, about thinking about your actions and you as an individual. But Rosh Hashanah really is a very metaphysical, global message. If I have to summarize all of the Rosh Hashanah davening in 3 words, it would be Hashem hu HaMelech, He's the King. And we say it again and again and again and again for 2 days straight. And the question then becomes, well, who else? Why do I need to be convinced? I know He's the King. In fact, in different stages of Jewish history, we were sometimes theologically challenged by Christianity, by Islam. Today, religion is not that powerful, and most of us don't have all kinds of quandaries about who the real God is. So when I say Hashem hu HaMelech, what actually am I trying to internalize that needs to be said in so many different ways? So I was once thinking that the biggest contestant and competition to Hashem hu HaMelech in modern society is me. I'm the king. I want things to go my way. And I find that we can talk about the fact that we are living in a very entitled society where people like to get their way. But I don't even look at it so much from that perspective. I think that as Jewish women, we hold a lot of control over our lives. I once was talking to a secular psychologist, family psychologist, and he said to me, all religious women that he knows are control freaks. He says, and I forgive all of you because you have so many pieces to your life that if you don't hold it all together very tightly, it all falls apart. So you become very controlling. Yeah, we're going to keep that a secret. And therefore, when we say Hashem hu HaMelech, there's this interesting dissonance that many things don't go our way in life. And yet we still are convinced that we'll try to get things to go our way as much as possible. So manipulate a little here, use a little protexia there, a little drama here, a little here or there. I'll get it done. And therefore, when we say Hashem hu HaMelech on Rosh Hashanah, we are internalizing the fact that He really is running the world. In fact, when we bow, we're basically saying, your way, you're first. You're in the center. I'm a supporting actress, one of the many, and I don't write the script here. When you, God, agree with what I had in mind, then things will go my way. But when you have a different plan, things will actually go your way. And my job is to be able to be curious as to why your way is better than mine. And that's not always so easy for us. So therefore, for 2 days straight, we say Hashem hu HaMelech, to remind ourselves that not only is He omnipotent and He could do anything, but He's also omniscient and He knows everything. And I'm really neither. I can't do everything, and I also don't know always what's best, even though I think I know what's best. So Hashem hu HaMelech is a very strong exercise in subjugation to higher authority and to allow God to run His world and to try to get on board with His ratzon, whatever it would be. In fact, Rav Nevinsal says that you have a very basic question that I ask every year, which is that the order of the Moadim seem to be very mixed up. If you had to choose, if you had to unscramble between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Elul, you probably would say Sor Meirah goes first. So first we should do Teshuva. Yom Kippur should come first. Then comes Aseh Tov. Now let's coronate the king in our clean clothing after we've done Teshuva. And then the culmination of this process is Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. Now me and God are very close. But we come straight from our summer vacation into Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. Then we coronate the king in our not yet clean clothing. and we culminate the process with doing tshuva, it doesn't seem to make sense. So Rav Nebenzahl says that the only way to understand why Rosh Hashanah comes before Yom Kippur is that there must be something about Rosh Hashanah that's a prerequisite for Yom Kippur and will make Yom Kippur more effective. So he brings a mashal like this. Over the year, there's accumulation of things that I've done wrong. We'll talk about that a little later, but having a good attitude towards those things. We'll talk about that. Now, I can either attack one thing at a time. It's like a building that I just take, I knock down one brick, Lashon Hara, another brick, Shabbos, another brick. Or, if you remove the foundation of the building, then the bricks come tumbling down. Rav Nebenzahl says there must be something about Rosh Hashanah that if we get it right on Rosh Hashanah, we actually remove the foundation of Chet and all the sins come toppling down. With that idea in mind, Hashem hu HaMelech, when you really internalize it, and I thought I was going to get ahead by cheating a little bit, and I thought that I was going to have a better, be more popular if I talk Lashon Hara. I thought I would manipulate to get my way. If he runs the world, then everything seems ridiculous. Because anything I do with my agenda has to fit with his. And then it kind of makes the whole Yom Kippur, gives a perspective. Okay. By the way, why Elul before Rosh Hashanah? So here are answers coming from Rav Shimshon Pinkus. Rav Pinkus said that when you enter Rosh Hashanah with all the things that you hope and ask for the new year, if you don't have a month of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li coming first, it's like a relationship that a person has with a vending machine. You come over to the Coca-Cola machine, and you pick your drink of choice, a Diet Coke, you press the button. The machine is asking you for 10 shekel, so you feed it the money that it's asking for. Then you press the button and you wait for it to deliver the goods. And if it doesn't deliver, you'll kick a little here and hit a little here until you get what you want. Another mashal for this is when you as a parent have a child, a teenager maybe who's not so communicative, and you wish you had a relationship with them, but they don't seem so interested. And one night they knock on your door and they say to you, "Hi, Mom, can I come in? Can we talk?" You're like, "Of course, the moment I've been waiting for." They sit down in your bed and say, "Can I have the car keys?" So when we enter Rosh Hashanah without Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, we're like asking Hashem for things not based on a relationship. So Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li is I am in a relationship with you, Hashem. You take care of me, you see me, you care about me, and I want to show up and be the best person in this relationship. And therefore, I'm going to ask you for a few things. Not as a hand over the car keys, but rather I really believe that if I didn't have to deal with this health issue, or this financial issue, or this struggle with this family member, I'd be so much more available to be the best version of myself in your new world. And that's why I'm asking for those things. It's a completely different attitude. We say this in the davening, starting on Rosh Hashanah. We say, Zachrenu l'chaim, melech chafetz v'chaim, v'katzvenu b'sefer ha'chaim l'mancha Elokim chaim. For your good, Hashem. For your good? Are we such angels that we don't want anything for ourselves? So there is a Rav in Haifa, Rav Ori Weisblum. He says, when you say l'mancha Elokim chaim, you don't mean that you don't want this for yourself as well. You're a human being. You'd like health, you'd like popularity, you'd like success, you'd like whatever you're asking for. You have your own personal reasons, and that's fine. But L'mancha Elokim chaim is asking you to evaluate on the continuum between very selfish reasons for wanting something and very altruistic reasons for wanting something. I want to pull myself up the continuum a little bit and say, Hashem, I need this for myself, but I also want to make your world a better place. And I'll use that gift, whatever I'm asking for, to make your world a better place. And that's when we say, L'mancha Elokim chaim, we're challenging ourselves. If you were to give this to me, Hashem, How would I be able to use it to make your world better? There is a mashal that Rebbetzin Salander used to give for this. You can ask for the same thing without this attitude or with this attitude, but it totally changes the dialogue. Because let's say a person wants to buy a hammer because he needs a hammer. So he goes into a hardware store and he says, "Can I have a hammer, please?" And they say, "Sure, that will be 25 shekel or whatever it costs." He has the money, he pays, and then he owns the hammer. If a person is in someone's home and came to fix something that was broken in the home and says to the homeowner, "Can I have a hammer, please?" The homeowner doesn't say, "That will be 25 shekel." He says, "Sure." He hands over the hammer because I came to use this to fix your house. And who pays who at the end? The homeowner pays the worker, the person who came to fix the home. When we ask for things and we think of L'man Chalukim Chaim, we're saying, "Hashem, these are the things I'd like to use in my toolbox to make your world a better place." It's not about buying it and purchasing it. I don't have to pay for it. He gives it to me for free. And he gives me reward for using those things to fix his home, his world. And that's our cheshbon in L'man Chalukim Chaim. So this is why Elul comes first. I have to be in a relationship to care enough to think and care about his world. I want to help his people. And after the year that we've been through, there's a lot of things that we want to heal. And if we use our gifts that God gave us to heal his world, it's what we're here for. And this is a very important aspect to think about Dafka this year. So much healing needs to take place. And if you, Hashem, if you make this easier for me, I'll be more dedicated. I'll be more able to focus on the needs of your children and your people and your land. And that is our kavanah. So I want to add something to this. When we say on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem hu hamelech, he is the king. There's another way to look at this, which is that this is an exclusive statement. He is the king and not anyone else. And the Lashon, Rav Nevinsal's Lashon is fascinating. He says, how do you go into those words and say them with good preparation? He says, Siluk shutafav hamidumim shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means getting rid of the imaginary partners of God. What does that mean? So I might feel like this. God runs my life, but so does my boss. God runs my life, but so does my mother-in-law. God runs my life, but so does that child who's wreaking havoc in the house. So Hashem has shutafim. He has imaginary partners, because he's not really only controlling my life. There's something else that's controlling my life. So Rav Nevinsal says that if you prepare properly for Rosh Hashanah, you ask yourself, is there anything that's sharing the throne with God that I'd like to remove because I want him to be the king and not other things to dominate my life? And there's a fine line between something influencing your life and something controlling your life. And that's what we're trying to focus on. You know, some people are interested in food or interested in fashion or interested in technology. And some people are dominated by food, by fashion and technology. So the question is, do I have a shutaf medumeh? Is there something that's up there that shouldn't be sharing the throne with God? And when I say Hashem hu hamelech, I want to ask myself this question. So I want to share with you a method that I've been thinking about this year for preparing for Rosh Hashanah. So I'll give a little preamble to this story. But how do you know if there's if there's something that's controlling, and what do you do about it? By the way, there are people who have children in shidduchim, and shidduchim can control your life. Or it can be a sugya in my life that doesn't dominate me. Sometimes there's even a friendship that is too powerful. We have a concept called limerence, which is relationship obsessiveness. And some people have so much concern about what a certain friend thinks about them that's up there controlling their life. So there's a lot of different forms of what the shituf could be. I want to share with you a thought that I had. I said to myself, how am I going to know if there's something controlling my life? So some of you probably think already, I know what's controlling my life, and you have the idea. Sometimes it's not so obvious to us. So I want to share with you a certain skill that I've been working on this year. This is based in a story, it's based in a little bit of a which is that I always feel a little bit guilty about something. I have a weekly, since October 7th, I have a weekly article in Dina magazine on bitachon. Now, what bothers me about it, this is the part that I feel guilty, is that I don't write up those articles. A very dear student friend of mine, Leah Hirschman, who's very brilliant, she writes up the articles, and I get the credit for them, but she's absolutely brilliant and much more articulate than me. And all I do really is that she listens to audio shiurim of mine from years ago, she writes them up, and then she sends them to me for approval. And since she can articulate everything much better than I can, she always gets my approval. But as I'm getting older and I'm getting a little rusty, sometimes my memory, sometimes I'll open an article that she wrote based on a shiur from years ago. I'm like, did I say that? I don't remember these ideas. I forgot them already. It's like new to me. So I'm getting a new shiur as I'm reading what she writes up about what I had said. So a bunch of weeks ago, she sent me an article, and I had that response. I'm like, wow, did I really say this? It's all new to me. And that example, I gave that example, really, it was all new to me. But what was interesting was that one of the examples that I brought from maybe 10 years ago was something that had actually happened to me in real life that week, the week that she wrote that article. And a few days after it happened, she wrote it to me, and it was an interesting, moment. And it ties into our idea of Hashem Hu HaMelech. The article was entitled Kviyut Itim. The Gemara in Shabbos, Masechah Shabbos Lamed Aleph, says that after a person's life, after Me'av Esrim, he goes up to Shemaim and he's asked many questions about his life. And one of the questions that he's asked is, Kavata Itim LaTorah. Did you set time for Torah learning? Now, the Gemara doesn't say, did you learn Torah, but rather, did you set time? And the idea that we're trying to develop here is that when you have a set time for something, it reflects a certain level of a value. You can try to catch a little Torah here, a little Torah there, but when somebody has their set shiur that they go to, it shows something about their value system, and it reflects something about them. I think about somebody who goes to the office to make money, and he stops in the middle of the day for his daf yomi shiur. So first of all, he's showing that Torah learning is really important to him, but also it's showing that he believes, mizonotav shel adam ksuvim, that since money comes from Hashem anyway, then if I shut my office for an hour to go to a shiur, I'm not going to lose any money. So really, he's showing how much he identifies with the principle, but also how much God runs the world. And the concept of kfiyut itim, of having a set thing that are important to you. And I think that this can be conceptualized beyond the concept of just of Torah. It's anything that I believe in that's a value, that I have a set way that I do this. And we don't realize how much, not only are we strengthening our value, but we're leaving a legacy for our loved ones as to how much this is important to us. I read a really cute story once. I saw a few versions of this, but it was a cute demonstration of this. There was a certain woman who writes that when she was a kala, when she was engaged, her kala teacher gave a very strong message about beauty and cosmetics, and said to her that unfortunately in the wider world, a lot of people walk around feeling very schlumpy in their house. And then when they have to go out somewhere, they take up their makeup and they put on these nice clothing. And the message is, you guys don't matter to me so much. When I go out, I have to look really nice. So the college teacher kind of said, maybe we should think of how to give a different message. So this young, newly married girl started at a very early stage. And she said, I developed a kviut, that 5 minutes before my husband would walk into the house, I would stop what I was doing, take out my makeup bag, and put on a little bit of makeup, freshen up for him. Then when I had children, I would look at my sweatshirt, and if the meatballs that the kids had thrown across the table had landed on my shirt, I would go change, and I'd freshen up with some makeup. And she said, I was strengthening a value for myself. But what she didn't realize, she said, is how much her children were affected by it. Until one day, it was the afternoon, she wasn't feeling so good, and she fell asleep on her couch. And 5 minutes before her husband came home, the 6-year-old says to the 5-year-old, quick, quick, Abba's coming in 5 minutes. They ran and brought her makeup bag and started making her up. So she said, my husband walked into a sleeping clown, but I never realized how much I'd given a message over to my children. And that's the concept of kviyut. Something that you do, you could talk about concepts, but when, a lot of times, when someone is sitting Shiva, my mother always, whatever, my father always. And then our question is, how are they going to fill the blanks about us? My mother always counted calories, or my mother always greeted people with a smile when she ran into them. And what always is going to be said about us, and what does it reflect about our values? So I was thinking that sometimes we ask ourselves, what are the constants in my life, and what are the variables? And do they reflect my values? So I will say that a bunch of years ago when I gave that shir, I gave an example. And this is a hard one. Let's say you have a woman who does exercise for a half hour a day on a treadmill. And she's proud of it. It's good. It's good for her health. It's a good value. But 20 minutes into her exercise routine, the baby starts crying. So the question is, what's the constant and what's the variable? If the constant is that I don't let a baby cry needlessly for a long time, she may have to painfully pull herself off the treadmill before she finished her half hour in order to tend to the baby. But if the constant is I need to get my half hour in no matter what, then she might actually leave the baby crying for 10 minutes so that she could finish her half hour routine. So sometimes we have conflicting values that we have to ask ourselves, what's the constant here and what's the variable? Okay, why is this important? I brought that example many years ago, and then I had an example like this that just happened. But I want to give you another example that Baruch Hashem didn't make it to the article. I myself went through a certain period of life where for 5 years I had no sugar. And I was so proud of it. It was really great to not have any involvement with sugar. And something I was proud of. I went to visit my aunt, who at the time was probably around 95 years old. And she says to me, Dina, I baked you cookies. And I find myself saying to her, oh, I'm so sorry, Aunt Gita, but I don't eat sugar. And then I stopped myself. I said, what's wrong with you? She's 95 years old. She doesn't even see so well, and she baked you cookies. If you have one cookie, it's not going to do something so terrible. And what's the constant and what's the variable? If the constant is I don't have sugar and the variable is hurting my great aunt's feelings, then maybe there's something here that's a little mixed up. Maybe the constant has to be that I don't hurt somebody's feelings, and the variable is I try not to eat sugar as much as possible. But sometimes we have chances to ask ourselves these questions. So the example of the treadmill with the baby crying after 20 minutes was an example that I brought many years ago. And now I have a application that happened that same week, earlier, before Leah Hirschman sent me the article. In the beginning of the summer, it was midsummer, it was right after Teshuva, I think, I went on a little vacation with my husband to Kibbutz Levi. And when I had to pack up, it often works out that the woman swimming overlaps with like the checkout time. So I quickly went to get my stuff together, but by the time I made it down to the pool, it was a half hour left to swimming. Now recently, now that my youngest is young, is older already, I get a chance to do some things that I never got a chance to do. And I got into swimming 40 minutes a day, as many days a week as I can, and I'm very proud of it. It's good for my health, it's good for emotional health, physical health, it's all good. I like to get in 40 minutes a day. So I went down to the pool, and there was only a half hour left to the swimming time by the time I got there. I said, okay, you know what? Half hour is still good. I get into the water, and 22 minutes into my time, the lifeguard blows her whistle and says, everyone out of the water. Now, Israeli lifeguards have a certain demut. She was this tall, very, she had this very special look to her. She was probably in her 70s. She looked like she was around 20. And she's like this strong, Israeli lifeguard. And she blows her whistle, everybody out of the water. Now, I look around, and nobody's getting out of the water. She was not religious, and the crowd of people in the water were religious. My Yetzer Hara says to me, Dina, you can get a few extra minutes of swimming because it's going to take her quite a while to get everyone out of the water right now. You don't have to be the last one out, but you don't have to be the first one out. And get an extra few minutes because no one's listening to her. And then similar to the story with the great aunt, all of a sudden I said to myself, what's wrong with you? 22 minutes plus Kiddush Hashem is not going to do better for your health than 40 minutes or a half hour? And who actually runs health anyway? Hashem. He runs health, he runs finances, he runs everything. So I pulled myself out of the water at 22 minutes. Wasn't so easy for me. I decided, you know what? I was so upset at myself. I said, you're going to be the first one out of the water. So I got out first. I guess Hashem wanted it to be a defining moment for me. Because after I got dressed, I went to the lobby, and the lifeguard was there, and she recognized me. Maybe I was the only person she didn't have to fight with that day. And she started talking to me. And around 2 minutes into our conversation, she told me that she has a son who was murdered in Nova this year. And the rest of our conversation was talking about everything she's been through this year and her family's been through. It ends up, we exchanged contact information, and we keep in contact with each other. And just the other day, I get a message from her, Shalom Dinush. Nobody calls me that, she's the only one. Ma shlomech, what are your thoughts about Rosh Hashanah? What are you thinking about as you're going to daven? And we have an ongoing dialogue. I think Hashem wanted me to know that sometimes you have to figure out what's your constant and what's your variable. And why am I saying all this in the context of Hashem Hu HaMelech? Because if you would have asked me in a vacuum, do you believe in offending 95-year-old ladies who bake you cookies? I would say never. If you asked me, would you believe that a woman should have to fight with you to get out of the water? And especially, Kiddush Hashem, that, I'm a religious person. I would say, of course, Kiddush Hashem is one of the biggest mitzvot. But all of a sudden I realized that my exercise thing became up there. Shutaf midumeh shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. It was dominating me too much. Because if I'm sacrificing principles that I believe in for my exercise, that means that has too much control over my life. And I never would have realized it if it wasn't for that question, what's the constant and what's the variable? What's becoming variables are things that are my priorities. Kiddush Hashem, Mizot Tovot, those are my main priorities. If something is making me compromise those priorities, then that thing has too much control over me. And sometimes I have students who tell me, I feel so guilty. I find that when I'm around a certain person, I tend to be more cynical, make fun of people. And it's not like me. I'm not the type. So in my mind, what goes down is that there's two things that control your life, Hashem and that friend. Because if that friend is making you sacrifice your principles, then that's too much control. So Rav Nevitzal says that our goal is siluk shutafav hamidumim shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to get rid of the imaginary partners of God and Shemayim. And I think that this is a good exercise because for those of us who find the Rosh Hashanah davening, to be very abstract, we want to think about how we could use this to clarify our goals and our values. So that was my thought for this year. And it's interesting, as I teach different groups, I try to tweak the idea to wherever the struggle might be. So I teach a group of very newly married, young, mostly Americans, who come here for a year or two, newly married. And They're an intimidating group in a certain way because they all dress beautifully and look beautiful. And some people tell me that they moved out of that shir because it was intimidating to be with that group, so they moved into a shir where now they've had such a perfect. And I was thinking about the kfiyut and thinking about the constants and variables. So I said something that I think was hard because I saw they looked like they were sweating after I said it. I said, imagine that you're shopping online and you found the perfect color shirt to match the outfit. And they even have it in your size, except it's very low in stock. And you're about to put through the order, and your husband walks through the door. Shana Rishona, newly married, there's no Avera to say to him, wait 1 minute, I'm putting through this order. But I said to the girls, I want to tell you from someone who's much older than you, that if you can't stop to greet a loved one at the door, this is only the beginning of your married life. There's going to be a million reasons why you can't stop and greet. So there's no halacha that says you have to do this. I said, will the shirt be available after you greet and talk to him for a few minutes? The answer is, as we say in Hebrew, o sheken o shelo. It might be, and it might not be. But I'm setting a kfiyut that people deserve to be greeted and eye contact made, and that's top priority by me. The variable is, hopefully I'll get the shirt. I even said to them, Hashem is even in what's in your wardrobe. Because in the good old days, when people used to shop in stores, you'd walk into a store, see a beautiful dress, and they even have it in my size. And sometimes it'd be, they don't have it in my size. Hashem controls what makes it to your wardrobe. So the same thing. If it's low in stock, it may be there. In a few minutes, it may not be there. But we're setting a priority and a value. When I speak to people in my stage of life, I say shidduchim can easily be shutaf medumesh l'kadosh baruch hu. Because women tell me sometimes that when they are checking out shidduchim for their kids, it could become an obsession. Always on the phone, always involved. Now, the 8-year-old sweet little boy walks through the door at the end of his long day in school, and those days are long days in school. Now, what exactly did he do wrong that he has a sister in shidduchim? Poor guy, he's never going to get his mother's attention ever again. So if she can stop and make eye contact with him and ask him about his day, she's reflecting that everybody here counts and that bas ploni leploni, shidduchim are made in Shemayim. One extra phone call now is not what's going to make it or break it for this shidduch. So I can stop and smile and give a good feeling to everybody. So there's so many places we can go with these ideas. But basically, I'll leave you with the idea that what's the constant and what's the variable? And when we ask ourselves that question, if something that should be a constant by me is turning into a variable, then maybe something else is controlling me too much. And that's a question which I think many people can say that about technology. That, I have my use of technology, and then I have the fact that I'm sacrificing important principles because of technology. So maybe up there next to Hashem is my smartphone, which is getting me to compromise values that I believe in, so it's controlling me. So everybody has their own lev yodea marat nafsho, as Mishnah Yuma says. Everybody knows their own story and where they need the work, and it's a very, very personal thing. I want to share one more idea as we wind down for today. Why are we doing all of this? Why sit there and think, what's the constant, what's the variable, what do I want to change, what do I want to strengthen? There's something that's very beloved to Hashem, and that's the concept of cheshbon nefesh. I often compare Nisan to Elul. In Nisan, when we have to clean our houses for Pesach, we kvetch and kvetch and kvetch. But then when you finally get to Pesach and you gave away tons of stuff to a gemach, and all the junk got thrown away, you finally find the things that you were looking for all winter that you couldn't find, and you know exactly what your sweaters are, and they're organized, you feel good. And I always say to myself, I wonder what people who don't actually keep Pesach, if they're not particularly cleanliness and neat oriented, they could have 50 years of accumulation and never get it decluttered. So Elul is a spiritual form of Nisan. It's the spiritual decluttering. It's the making order. And once a year, Hashem gives us the gift of some kind of time period by which He wants this to be done, because people who don't have those time periods go through 50 years of clutter and not understanding why they keep getting into trouble in this area or that area, or can't get along with this person. They never sat and analyzed it. So Hashem gives us the gift once a year of saying, I'm going to give you a time to actually sit and make some seder in there and get to know yourself better. And this is very beloved to Hashem. I'll end by saying a quick story that my husband told 2 weeks ago that really blew me away, and it taught me something about why we want to do cheshbon nefesh this time. The story goes, and this is a true story, about a Rebbe in a little boys' school, in a military school, where one of the little boys comes over to his Rebbe and says, Rebbe, somebody stole my watch. And the Rebbe has to think how to deal with this. So it's a story that was circulating that some people have heard. The Rebbe says to the kids, empty out the contents of your pockets and your tikim, your bags, and put it on your personal table, and turn around and look at the wall so you won't see what people put on the table. So the children do this, and they're looking at the wall, and the boy who stole the watch is sitting there waiting for the moment of public humiliation. Soon the Rebbe's going to come. He's going to see the watch. He had no choice. He had to empty his pocket. And the Rebbe's going to find it, and then everyone's going to know I'm a robber. He waits and waits for the moment to come. He feels the Rebbe coming to his desk, and then the Rebbe passes by his desk. He didn't say anything. And the child was pretty surprised. By this point, the Rebbe already had the watch in his pocket. Finishes going through the class. All the kids turn around, and the Rebbe says, it looks like we have to keep looking, implying that the robber was not one of the children in the class. Walks out of the classroom, walks around a few classrooms in the school building, comes back later and says, we found the watch. The child was so touched by the Rebbe not exposing him and not even implying him that it pierced his heart, and he started learning much more seriously. He started taking the Rebbe's messages very seriously. He started working on himself. It was the beginning of his upward trajectory. Many, many years later, as an adult, he actually met the Rebbe somewhere. And he says to the Rebbe, I never told you this, but when I was a young boy and you didn't expose me as the robber, you saved my life. Because the direction I was going in before, who knows where it would have gone, and it totally turned me around, and I went all the way up. And the Rebbe said something amazing. The Rebbe says to him, I want you to know that up till this very moment, I did not know that you were the robber because I wasn't looking as I collected the watches, the things from the table. I myself didn't know which boy had taken it. I was so moved by this story, and I'll end with this. Hashem says to us, Lo hibit avin b'Yakov, v'lo ra amal b'Yisrael. Hashem does not want to look at our averos, but it's Yom Adin. He's making law and order in the world. How do you make din without looking? So the answer is the Medrash in Dvarim Rabbah. The Medrash says, Amar Rabbi Lezer, Shenasa din lemata, ein din lemala. If you do a cheshbon on yourself, then I don't need to look into your file. And that Rebbe was communicating with the child, not even knowing which child he was thinking that about. I believe that if I don't get involved here, you're going to own it and do your own process. And Hashem says, if you do cheshbon nefesh, and you come to me with what you'd like to change, it doesn't have to be perfect. But the fact that you owned it, I want din in the world. I want law and order. I want seder. I want decluttering. I want spiritual direction. But I don't need to look. And that is the message of cheshbon nefesh. That when we do the din down here, Hashem doesn't have to do. And that's what he wants even more. Lo hibit avin b'Yakov. So halavai, we should all take advantage of this beautiful time of year and this gift of introspection and direction. And halavai, we should all bring many Yeshua to Klal Yisrael this year. Thank you.